أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد ووالد وما ولد لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد أيحسب أن لن يقدر عليه أحد يقول أهلكت مالا لبدا أيحسب أن لم يره أحد ألم نجعل له عينين ولسانا وشفتين وهديناه النجدين فلاقتحم العقبة وما أدراك ما العقبة فك رقبة أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة أو مسكينا ذا مسربة ثم كان من الذين آمنوا وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالمرحمة أولئك أصحاب الميمنة والذين كفروا بآياتنا هم أصحاب المشأمة عليهم نار مؤصدة.
صدق الله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Surah Balad. Surah Balad is the meaning of ayat a little bit tricky if you have studied in a different translation. Maybe what we learn in this course, Tadabbur course, as I've told you that what Tadabbur group they have done more than, or the main lecturer, Ustad Sabuhi, he has done more than 20 years research on this thing. So if you hear something in this surah or like other ayats of other surahs, which is not compatible with what you have studied or you have seen in different translations, be sure that they have done lots of research. And because Arabic is like that, one word, it has got different meanings, and depends on which meaning it has been used in the translation of the ayat, it can change the meaning of the verse. So they have done lots of research, and they have chosen the most compatible meaning and explanation with every surah and each ayat according to the whole content of surah and according to the whole guidance of the surah. So if you have studied different, that's the reason I said it's good to study different translation. I shared the link in the Skype as well. And that's very good link, which has got different translation, English translation of different translators. But still, maybe you will hear something in Surah Balad which you haven't studied, you haven't seen in any of these translations. Inshallah, we go step by step. There are lots of points in it, and it's I can say it's difficult to understand. If we can't finish it today, or if we finish it and there will be still questions, we can spend another session as well on Surah Balad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Generally, Surah Balad is divided to two groups of ayats. Ayat 1 to 7, and then ayat 8 to 20. There are lots of discussions about how they have been classified this surah into two groups. But today we go through the meanings and we'll study the surah, and then inshallah, if there will be questions about how they have divided this surah to two different groups and what are the reasons, and this we can spend time next session. Because I think that if we learn the surah first, then it can make more sense if we discuss about why it has been divided. Because we are beginners now for Tadabbur, which we are beginners and we are on the start of our way, that's the beginning of our way to understand that how can we divide them verses to groups. and how we can classify them, because we use meanings, we use Arabic grammars and different options we use to classify verses to different groups. So, and especially about Surah Balad, because it's a little bit complicated. It's better we learn the meaning first, we study the surah first, and inshallah, in next session, if there will be questions, we go through those kind of discussions. Okay, again, this surah Allah has started with Qasam, with oath. But the difference is Allah is saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, La uqsimu bihadha al-balad. We said that for emphasizing the content, for emphasizing something or the content of a sentence, in normal dialogue, sometimes we use swearing by something or oaths and qasam. And Allah, in many verses of different surah of Quran, it's the same that Allah wants to emphasize about something or about the content of the whole surah. He uses qasam or oaths, and sometimes he says, for example, like walayl, was-duha. He swears by something. Allah swears by something, and sometimes he says like here, la uqsimu bihadha al-balad. This is another technique that to emphasize on something. In some translations in English or Farsi or maybe Urdu, you have seen that when they translate it, they translate it positively. For example, because they say that when we say la uqsimu, we said that la makes the verb negative in Arabic. When we say la, Allah is saying la uqsimu means that I don't swear by, for example, here, Allah uqsimu bihadha al-balad. Hadha means this, and balad means city, which city of Mecca is, this is related to city of Mecca. And when Allah is saying La uqsimu bihadha al-balad, it means I do not swear by this city. But in some translation, maybe you have seen that it says that I swear, because they say when Allah is saying I don't swear, it means that He is emphasizing that I swear. But in Tadabbur, we say that no, when Allah is saying La uqsimu, it doesn't mean that I uqsimu. It doesn't mean, for example, it doesn't mean Wahaz al balad in this ayah, in this verse, because there are reasons that Allah has brought this way. Allah didn't swear on something. There are reasons, so we don't translate it as, we don't explain it that, oh, it is again because Allah wants to emphasize He's saying La uqsim, so we translate it as uqsim or Wahaz al balad. I swear, no. And there are mainly two reasons when Allah is saying, I don't swear by something. And in fact, this is another technique of emphasizing on something. There are two reasons. Sometimes the clarity of the word and its legitimacy is such clear that there is no need to swear. For example, sometimes even in our normal conversation, sometimes we say something which is so clear, we think that there is no need to swear by something. And another reason is that sometimes the greatness and importance of what Allah has not sworn by. For example, if in normal conversation, if you want to say something to your friend or family and you want to emphasize it, and we say, for example, we say that we don't, and for example, our mother's life, our child's life is so important to us. So we don't swear by our children's lives. We don't swear by our, for example, closest loved ones to prove something, because we say that is more so valuable for us that we are not ready to swear by, for example, life of my child or life of my mother to prove something, to make somebody believe on what I'm saying. So the greatness and importance of what Allah wants to say, has not sworn by, is that much that is so high that makes Allah say, I do not swear. And here the reason is that, for example, when Allah is saying, لا أقسم بهذا البلد, it means that I don't swear by this city. And ayat number 2, it clarifies it. وأنت حل بهذا البلد. I do not swear by the city. Which city? The city in which you are now living in, to Prophet. It means that because of the greatness of our Prophet and respect and high level position of our Prophet, who is in that city, who lives in that city, who is in this land, Allah doesn't want to swear by this land, by Mecca. So Allah is saying, I do not swear by this land, by this city, in while you are in this land, you are living in this city. It means that your presence in this city is so great, is so high that I don't swear by that. And hell and أنت حل بهذا البلد. حل in fact is the root in Arabic is halala, and it is infinitive. If we want to, because we don't want to discuss grammar points too much, as I mentioned quickly, and I pass. So it is. It means that when being somewhere for permanently, living, for example, somewhere. So when Allah is saying, "Anta hillun," anta means you Prophet, hillun, you are living, you are in this place, in this city. I do not swear by that. Again, in some translations, we may see that they have written that because your because, or Prophet, because you are innocent, you are pious, your presence, for example, removed obstacles from this city. But it's not so compatible with the content of the surah. And we can see that even when Prophet is there, and some people, they do not listen to him or they disobey him. So that's not the main point. Ayat number 3, وَوَالِدٍ وَمَا وَلَدٍ. Walid in the word wise, it means father. Because in Arabic, when it has walide, it becomes a female. Walid is male. Walid is father. Wama walad. So it is, I swear by the father, and walma walad, which was born of him. If we want to translate it, just word by word, it means that. But the real meaning of it is that wallet is father, is this in fact is the starter of child's life cycle. So in that point of view, Allah is swearing and making qasam by wallet, wa walidin, wa ma walad, which we all explain when we go forward and we study following ayats. Inshallah, we go through it. And in some tafsirs, it has been said that it is, I swear by great father and his son, which is Prophet Ibrahim, and Ishmael has Prophet Ismail. Ishmael. It means that Allah is saying that I don't swear to this land because you are living, or to our Prophet because you are living in it. And then Allah is saying, and I swear by the father or by the starter of child's life cycle, and walad, which was born of him. Just so Allah, by making in two ways, he wants to emphasize. One, by not making by not swearing, by la uqsimu, and in ayat 3 by swearing wa walidin wa ma walad. Again, what is the content Allah wants to emphasize. We say always that there is, when Allah swears by something in verses of Quran, sometimes the ayat which comes after that is the answer of this oath, and sometimes the whole content of surah is answer of the oath Allah has made. And in Surah Balad, in fact, it's both ways. Is ayat number 4, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ, is the verse which Allah wants to emphasize on it, because لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ means we said that la is for emphasizing. So you know how many times we have already repeated that la is for emphasizing. So this is one of the points that you should know now. When we say la, it means definitely, certainly. So definitely, certainly, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We have certainly created the human beings, mankind, في كبد. Kabad again is infinitive, tolerating suffering and hardship. It means tolerating suffering and hardship. Kabad. So to face a great deal of hardship. So in Surah Balad, Allah wants by these two making up and ووالد وما ولد, law of Semo, negative one, and positive one. Allah wants to emphasize on ayat number 4 and the whole content of surah. So we said that before, when Allah makes Allah swears by something in verses of Quran, sometimes the ayat after these oaths are the answer of Qasam or answer of the oath, and sometimes the whole content. In Surah Balad is both, which I explain inshallah. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. This is very important verse. We have certainly, la is for emphasizing and qad again for emphasis. So and then Allah says laqad, it's in fact he emphasized, other than he emphasized by those oaths, by swearing, by not swearing in ayat 1 and 3. Here on ayat 4 again he used laqad to emphasize. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ. We have certainly created the mankind to face a great deal of hardship. So it means that all comforts in this world are accompanied by hardship. What mankind expects? Mankind wants the pleasure of the world and all the blessings with pure pleasure, no hardship, no difficulties. Normally we expect that we get all the blessings and pleasure of the world without tolerating any hardship, or with tolerating no hardship. But you see that in ayat, in verse number 4, Allah clearly says that we have certainly created insan, created human beings to face a great deal of hardship. So that is real life. That is real reality of this world. This world is not for pleasure with no hardship. Now let's see who are the audience of these verses. Which kind of audience Allah is saying, which kind of man, which type of mankind, which type of bashar insan, which type of mankind Allah is talking to on these ayats. That Allah is saying, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ, emphasizing, he's trying to make that type of person to understand that, oh, you, who you think that this world is for just for pleasures and blessings with no hardship, you are wrong. In fact, definitely, certainly, Allah has created you to face hardship, to deal hardship. And who is Allah is talking to in ayat 5 to 6, 5, 6, and 7, we can see which kind of person Allah is talking to. أَيَحْسَبُ أَنْ لَنْ يَقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ أَحَدٌ. Does he think that Never will anyone overcome him. No one will never have control over him. أيحسب, does he think? And لن يقدر, again, لن makes the verb negative. لن يقدر عليه أحد. Does he think that no one will ever have control over him, never will overcome him? Why does he think like this? Because in ayat 6, يقول أحلفت مالا لبدا. Because he thinks, because he says, يقول, he says, أحلفت مالا لبدا. This is again one ayat which has got lots of points in it, and you need to listen carefully, inshallah. And then ayat 7, أيحسب أن لم يره أحد. Does he think that no one has seen him? No one has watched him? No. Okay, what does this? Which type of mankind is that person that Allah has explained in these few ayahs, ayat 5 to 7? Allah is talking to the person who is saying يقول أحلكت مالا لبدا. What does it mean? Labad means abundance that arises from accumulation. It means that the person has collected lots of wealth, lots of, for example, money or possessions, and he is using it without limits. And then he is saying that أحلكت means I wasted. But if we want to translate it word by word, which I'm sure you have seen this translation in English translation, it means something that it doesn't make sense, the real meaning we want to talk about. Because this is, in fact, is a phrase in Arabic language. It's not a sentence which we can translate it word by word. It doesn't mean the real meaning. Because then because there are, for example, some phrases in Farsi or in Urdu or in English. If we translate the sentence word by word, it doesn't make sense. We should know what's the culture behind it. In Arab culture, أحلكت مالا لبدا is used when a person has got lots of money or lots of properties or is well off, and he is that kind of person who spends non-stop, who spends without any care and limitation. Just he wastes it just to use it because he thinks that he should enjoy without limits. Maybe you have seen that, and he is proud of it. He shows off. For example, he somebody who is well off, and he spends without any limitation. He spends in a way that he wastes his properties, his money, and just to enjoy, and without any care. And he shows off. For example, I don't know if you have seen. I've faced these kind of people. That, for example, he says that, oh, you see, the wages of that person, for example, that labor for 1 year is just one. It's just I spend that much when once I go to restaurant for food. I face this kind of person that they show off that, oh, money is nothing for us. We are so well off that money is too much money doesn't mean anything to us. Or, for example, the wages of that, for example, again, wages of that labor is just enough for me to buy a frame and hang it on the wall of my house, for example, or just buy furniture for my house, or even more than that. So that kind of person Allah is facing in this in this verse, that who, because ahlaktum is a phrase in Arabic that even in the time of Prophet, those people, when somebody is like that, then he shows off and he wants to say that, oh, I don't care how much I spend, I just want to enjoy. I spend for my pleasure without any limitation and this and that. And in that case, he says, أحلكت مالا لبن. In different translation or tafsir, if you have seen, you may have seen that it says that I waste somebody, for example, who believes in Allah, who has spent in the way of Allah and fought, and then he has, for example, spent lots of money on the way of Allah as infaq, but he says that, oh, I wasted that money. But if in our class, we are not in that position that we go compare different translations, different tafsirs, and different, for example, rawayats and traditions to get results of that. That's not part of our course. We just use the results of the research they have done. But in some tafsirs, there are some reasons for this. For example, one of the tafsirs, At-Tahrir wa Tanbir, the author is Ahl al-Sunnah and is a very good tafsir, who is called Ibn Ashur. He has said that this is the culture of Arabs. And again, Allama Tabatabai, in his tafsir, he has mentioned a tradition, a rawayat, which says that when a person who spends a lot, but on the way of against profit, he said that, he showed up, he was proud of himself that I've spent this much, for example, too much money on the way of in the way of being against profit and making obstacles for profit, and he's proud of that. They have brought these explanations for this ayah. But even Tafsir Majma al-Bayan, which Allama Tabatabai brought these points from it, the author is Marhum Tabrasi. He is saying again that no, this and when they investigate this rawayat, they say no, it's not powerful rawayat. It's the documentary behind this rawayat is not strong enough that we can say it is right. So the conclusion is, and because of the culture of Arab people and the way they use this as phrase, this a common phrase between them, is about the person who is well off and he who has accumulated lots of money and properties and possessions, and when he spends, he boasts and show off and says that, I've spent lots of money as an honor for himself. Then that's kind of person that يقول أهلكت مالا لبدا. So the audience of this ayat, which Allah is emphasizing that لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد, is that kind of person, which we explain why and what is the relation between these oaths and the contents of these verses and the personality of this person. If you think about that kind of person, okay, somebody who is well off and he spends with no care, just waste money just for his pleasure, wasting, which we say israf, profusion, and then he is not aware that there is a power higher than him to control him, to overtake him. When he is unaware of that, in fact, he is unaware of Allah's powers. He thinks that because of his money and his wealth, he is capable of everything. Then Allah tells him, أَيَحْسَبُ أَنْ لَنْ يَقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ أَحَدٌ? Doesn't he think that there is a higher power who can overcome him? Does he think that never will anyone overcome him? No one will ever have control over him. أَيَحْسَبُ أَنْ لَمْ يَرَهُ أَحَدٌ? Does he think that no one has seen him? It means that this higher power who is Allah, is capable of both. Is capable of watching him constantly, and nothing is hidden from him, and he can take over him. He can control over him. He can control him. And which kind of Allah is that Allah? Which kind of power is that power? Is that Allah who has لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. He is the same Allah who has created him to face great deal of hardship. It means that Allah, the way Allah has created us, it is like that we deal with hardship in this life and this world. Not in fact, it's right if we don't use life for this world, because we saw in Surah Fajr, that's قدمت لحياتي. Hayat means life. In fact, Allah used life for hereafter, not for this world. But normally in our normal conversation, we say this life and the hereafter life. But in fact, the real life is hereafter, and we can't even mention, we can't even call this world life. But in normal conversation, we use it, and there's no problem with it. So it says that, does this person think that he has got power to get rid of these hardships? If not, which Allah is saying, أَيَحْسَبُ أَنْ لَمْ يَقْدِرْ عَلَيْهِ, definitely he can't. He can't get away from hardship of life. No matter how much money he has, how much properties he has, how much position, power he has, he can't get away from the hardship of this life. So, is it still should he still think that أهلكت مالا لبدا? Should he still think that way as somebody who is proud of his wealth and power? In fact, in ayat number 5, 6 and 7, Allah wants to say that this person, he is always defeated by Allah. Because in many different ayats of verses of Quran, we have seen Allah is saying Aziz. He calls himself Aziz. Aziz means who is always winner, who never fails. Qadir, who is the most powerful. So when that kind of power, which never fails, is on top of him, is controlling him, controlling that kind of person, and all that Allah is the winner against him. So who he is, how can he still be proud and say, أحلكت مالا لبدا? Now let's go back and see what's the relationship between these oaths at the beginning of the surah with this لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد, which Allah wants to emphasize on it. And we know that even we haven't go forward, we haven't studied the rest of the Surah Balad. Even up to here is enough for us, that if we know that we have created to face hardship in this world, so how can it change our view to this life, and how can it change the way of life? In ayat 1, Allah is saying, لا أقسم بهذا البلد. I don't swear by this city, because, O Prophet, because because you are living in this city. And then Allah is saying in ayat number 3, وَوَالِدٍ وَمَا وَلَدٍ. And I swear by the father, which we said it means the starter of the life cycle of child, and which what has been created by that. How it is? Because the وَوَالِدٍ وَمَا وَلَدٍ is close to لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. These two verses are one after each other. First, we go through this one. We said that walid is the starter of the life cycle of child creation. And mawalad is the result, is the, for example, the baby who is born, is the result of this cycle. Is that I swear by the father as the starter of the of child's life cycle, and walad, which was born of him, which is the result of this cycle. In fact, Allah wants us to notice the whole cycle of childbirth, baby, the whole cycle of baby creation to the point that he is born, from the start to the beginning, which we know that this cycle is one of the most difficult cycles of life, of stages in this on this world. For example, imagine the mother how she suffers till the time she's, for example, expected, she's pregnant, to the time she's due to, and the baby is born. How much she suffers, how much suffering is that cycle from the start to the end. So this is a very good example to explain one of the examples of hardship of this life. And another interesting point is that when Allah says Wawalid, it means father. It means that Allah wants to mention like the start of the cycle. So we notice the whole cycle from the time which baby starts to shape and grows stage by stage in mother's womb until the baby is born on this world. And the suffering, through the developmental suffering, or the natural suffering of this process, of this cycle, is inevitable, cannot be avoided. So it's a very good example, and everybody experiences it. So it's a very good example when Allah wants to emphasize that لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. I've definitely, certainly created mankind to deal with hardship. You know how it is related? Before وَوَالِدٍ وَمَا وَلَدٍ. Oh, you can see, oh mankind, you can see from the exact start of the cycle of your life, how much suffering you went through, how much you tolerated suffering. So how can you ignore that this life is not for dealing and facing hardship? I don't know, when I was studying Surah Al-Balad, it was so interesting for me. And inshallah, I can explain it in a way that, in fact, in Farsi, we say حق مطلب ادا بشه. I can explain it in a way that it will make sense the way it should for you, and I can translate at least a little bit of the message of Allah. And then another qasam, which was negative, لا أقسم بهذا البلد. What's the relation between this and the verses? For this, it's this لا أقسم بهذا البلد is related, in fact, to the whole content of Surah. I said that وَوَالِدٍ وَمَا وَلَدٍ is related to لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد, and لا أقسم بهذا البلد is related to the whole content of the Surah. And when you recite لا أقسم بهذا البلد, definitely there are some questions comes to our mind that, okay, why Allah has swear by this city, and why did he say لا أقسم and he didn't say أقسم or والبلد, and why Allah is saying that the reason I don't swear by this land is that, oh Prophet, is that you are in that land. Lots of questions which it will be answered by other ayats of Surah Balad. In fact, when we study the rest of verses, we can see that the city of Mecca was a place that there were two different groups of people living there. Like now, when we can see exactly the same at the moment that in in the city they were living two different groups, two different groups of people. One group was the group we saw, those groups of Yaqul, Ahlak, Somal, and Lobata, those group who that those kind of person that who they are well off, uh, very rich, powerful, and they just waste their money. They spend it in a way of wasting with no care, and they are proud of it, and they show off of it. And opposite, there are groups of people who they really in need. They are really in need, and they're suffering from the hardship, no money, no food. In fact, poor people, orphans. And then why Allah didn't say that I swear, and He said La uqsamu. It's said that, what's the reality of oath, qasam. Maybe in your normal life, or in your culture, you have had the same thing. For example, in Farsi or in Iran, in our culture, we have got this. Since my childhood, I had heard this from, for example, my grandmother that, oh, when you want to prove something, you prove that what you are saying is right, don't swear by something. Don't say, for example, don't swear by Allah. Don't swear by especially Quran, because it was common that, for example, once my grandmother was saying that before, when we were child, there were that I remember that two families to prove, uh, for example, that the property is for them, they brought Quran and they said, we swear by Quran that, for example, that property is ours. And she was saying, I remember the both families' life was totally destroyed after that. So I want to say that even in our life, we have heard and we have experienced that making swearing by something or oaths, especially by those by something which is so great and high level, like Allah or Quran and this thing, it has got its very bad influence, naturally bad influence. So it's not easy that we just to prove something we oath by something or we swear by something and we use oaths even in normal life. And this is not just a culture, this is reality. For example, in Eid Mubahala, which was a few days ago, you know that when Prophet, uh, for example, Christian, they came from Najran, and the Prophet wanted, they said that we come and swear that we are right. When even those people from Najran, when they saw that Prophet brought Hazrat Zahra Salamullah and Imam Ali alayhi salam, his family, to say they backed off and they said no, we don't swear by them, because they knew the result, the natural result in the result, because they are so high people, the influence of those that wrong Assam wrong odds, it will really destroy their life. So I want to say that if and exactly same reason that one of the reason Allah said law he said that because there were these two groups of people opposite each other wealth wise, and in the city, one group who they had that much money, who they didn't know how to spend it and waste it, and opposite there were some poor people that were really in need, and these two groups of people. And then Prophet was there, that who was bringing the message of Allah to them, who was just just unmuted a few minutes because Haji and they are making noise, and I just Sorry. So the reason, and because there were these two different groups, and a prophet was delivering the message of Allah about infaq, which we go through it in the following verses, that they should help each other. They definitely, and which we have said before, how important is helping poor people. If Allah would swear by this land in a way that they had the message of Allah and the Prophet was there to deliver the message, and still they would not obey it, then it would destroy their life immediately because of we say qazab ilahi, because of Allah's anger. So that was the reason, was one of the reason Allah is saying La uqsimu bihadha al-balad, because he, to prevent the natural influence of this qasam, especially when Allah swears by something. It's not a normal person. Just for example, in our normal life, we say don't swear by great things like Allah. And when Allah makes oaths and swears by something, the natural influence in the world, it will be very high. And so that's one of the reason Allah said La uqsimu bihadha al-balad. For example, in another example for qasam in Surah Waqia, when Allah in ayat 75 and 76, He says فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم. I don't swear by the position of stars or falling stars. Next ayat وإنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم. It means that most surely it is a very great oath if you only knew. وإنه لقسم. إن emphasizing, لا emphasizing. إنه لقسم لو تعلمون. لو تعلمون means if you only know. عظيم. So إنه لقسم عظيم. If you just know it, if you just understand it, how great, how عظيم it is, how great it is, how it can influence it can influence the life. So Allah, by this, that's the reason Allah is saying La uqsim, and this way He wants to emphasize that to these people who they are rich and they just spend with no care of poor people. They just waste their money and they are proud of it and they don't help poor people. That you should help those poor people. So this way He wants to emphasize that be aware that you don't think that your money and your power is everything and nobody can take over you. There is a power over you, a lot power, who can take over you, who can control you, and He is always always watching you. So this is the first group of ayats of Surah Balad, ayat 1 to 7, and inshallah next step ayat 8 to ayat 20, second group. So when we start second group, inshallah. So when Allah is emphasizing that لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ, definitely, certainly, I've created mankind to face the hardship, to deal with difficulties in this world. This means that mankind is always defeated by Allah. Allah is always can always take over him. So mankind is nobody, nothing compared with the power of Allah. And Allah is saying that by these two ayat, يَحْسَبُ أَنْ لَمْ يَقْدِرْ عَلَيْهِ أَحَدٍ يَحْسَبُ أَنْ لَمْ يَرَهُ أَحَدٍ. Allah wants to say that so there is no point of saying أَحْلَكْتُ مَالًا لُبَدًا. There is no point of being proud of your money, of your properties, and of your power. There's no point for it. Okay, so the audience of the first group of ayat, who is the audience? Which type of person? Those well-off people who they waste their money, they spend their money in a way of wasting and without any limitation and mm, without helping poor people. How can we say that? How did we understand this? That this kind of people are those people that Allah is talking in the first group of ayat, from ayat 11 to 16. And if you when we go through ayat 11 to 16, we can exactly see that this type of people who they didn't help uh, poor people are the audience who Allah is talking to them in first group of ayats. In ayat 8 to 10, in fact, Allah is trying to guide mankind by reminding a stage of human life to him. In fact, Allah is using a stage of life as a guiding influence to remind the special, to guide mankind. Is using a special stage of life and Allah is trying to remind people, to remind insan, bashar, mankind, by reminding, to guide. Allah is trying to guide. I correct my sentence because I think I confused you. Allah is trying to guide mankind by reminding him of a special stage of life. Let's see what is that special stage of life. ألم نجعل له عينين ولسانا وشفتين وهديناه النجدين. Again, if you have studied translations, maybe you have seen different kind of type of translations, which again maybe will be surprising for you, because I was surprised when I was reading the translation. Was reading the translation. For instance, ألم نجعل له عينين? Have we not given him two eyes? This is clear. And when in Arabic, when it is alam is used, alam, it means it's a grammar style to bring proof and reminding about something. Alam naj'al lahu aynayn, and it's the question that when Hamza comes at the start of the sentence, it makes a question. It's like do, does, is, are when it comes at the start of the sentence in English. So alam naj'al lahu aynayn, and lam is making it negative. Alam naj'al, have we not given him two eyes, aynayn, wa lisanan wa shafatayn, and a tongue and two lips, shafatayn. And again, here and noon, another point of Arabic. You see, ayn, it becomes aynayn. When we add ya and noon, it makes it two. But in English, we have singular and plural. In Farsi as well. But in Arabic, and that's one of the reason again, Arabic is one of the most complete ones. We have singular, and then when it is two, then we say musanna is two things, and then plural. So between singular and plural, we have got tasniya, which is two. So I and ya and noon, when it is added to the noun, it makes it two. When we say aynayn is two eyes, shafatain, two lips. وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ, and have we not guided? هَدَيْنَاهُ, هَدَيْنَا is we guided, and hu, هَدَيْنَاهُ means him. Haven't we guided him? Najdain. Okay, this Najdain is important. That I'm sure that if you have studied the translation, you've got something else in mind. In fact, Najd in Arabic means something projected one, something bumps, rise, tuber, two bumps. Haven't we guided him into two, for example, rise, two bumps, two tuber? And I'm sure you have seen in translation that they say that it means that guiding to good. Have we not shown him or guided him two ways of good and evil. But this is not right. Why is not right? Why it doesn't mean that two ways of evil and good? It's not that, because when we say hadainahu, it is means guidance of Allah. And how can we say Allah guides people towards evil? Okay, guides people to right, to good, to khair, it is okay. But when it comes to shar, to evil, how can Allah guide people to evil? So it doesn't mean that when we use the word of hidayat, when we use the word of guidance, guiding, it is always in Quran, it is for guiding to happen. So when it hidayat comes in, it means that right way. So it doesn't, it's not right to say that um, it means hadaynahu najdain, it means that haven't we guided him into two ways of good and evil. In that case, Allah would not use hadaynahu. It's the word of hidayah. For example, he would use showing. For example, we're gonna show them. He would not say guiding them. For example, in Surah Insan, when Allah is saying, "Inna hadaynahu sabil, imma shakiran, imma kafura." Uh, we have guided him to the way. It doesn't say that right or wrong, because when it comes to hadaynahu, hidayah, of course it is the right way. And person can be grateful or disbelief kafur. Another proof for this, that this doesn't mean khayr and shar hadainahu najdan, doesn't mean we guided him to khayr and shar, to good and evil way. It means one of another proof is that because we say that these words in tadabbur, we said that tadabbur, that every ayat comes another if they are related. We said alam naj'al lahu aynayn. Okay, if two eyes and tongue and two lips, if they were for guiding, after that we could have said, or instead of those, we could have, Allah could have said alam naj'al lahu, for example, and I don't remember the word for ear in Arabic now, unfortunately. Ozone, yeah, ozone. And Allah would talk about ear, or about the comprehension ability of people. You know what I want to say? I want to say, if it was to do, if ayat 10 was to do with guiding to good and evil, to khair and shar, then one of the reasons which we said, that when it comes to the point of guiding and hidayat, can't be towards shar, can't be towards evil. And another reason, because all these ayats, then Allah could have used ears, comprehension for those sense of people, those tools of mankind, instead of lisan and shafatain, two lips, or tongue and two. So what is the most correct meaning for ayat 10 is that Najdain means the breast of mother while feeding. Why? Because if you notice the verses 8, 9, and 10 is the process of guiding infants, the newborn baby, to how to be fed, how to drink milk from mother's breast. It's guidance for him during breastfeeding. And it is compatible with verse number 3, وَوَالِدٍ وَمَا وَلَدْ, which Allah again there used that also to emphasize on لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. Use the cycle of birth of a child. And here is the same. Allah is saying that, have we not given him two eyes? Didn't I guide you by your eyes and by your tongue and lips? And I guided you towards your mother's breast to drink milk and to grow up. And even in psychology, it has been proved now, in science of psychology, it has been proved that how important is contacting eyes, eye to eye, for child and mother during breastfeeding. And this, you have noticed that when the mother is breastfeeding the child, how the child, even newborn, how he looks or she looks at the mother, into mother's eyes. So, in fact, baby or infant, newborn baby, infant is so weak, is not capable of doing anything. And how can he find a way to drink milk? So that is very strange process, but because it has been repeated and repeated in our life, it has become a normal process for us. That we see, okay, we breastfeed the child, but this is very complicated. That how Allah guides the infants to drink milk, and in which stage of life? In that stage of life, which baby is totally weak, is totally incapable of doing anything. And then after this process, after reminding this stage of life, which he has been uh, guided by the care of Allah, and went through the path of growth and drank milk and became a strong adult. Okay, after reminding this stage of life and how Allah guided him and helped him, what Allah says, ayat number 11, فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةَ فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةَ. It means that then he has not entered into Aqaba. Iqtahama, again, because we don't want to explain Arabic grammar too much, when iqtiham, which is infinitive of laqtahama, when in Arabic, when verb goes to different shapes of verb, it gets different meanings. For example, um, I can't explain it now because we have got different different ways for verbs. For example, we say ifta'al or infa'al and all this. So here, laqtahama, it means that trying to get into something difficult. The way it has been used, the shape it has been used, the shape, the verb has been used in that shape. It means that iqtaham here means trying to get into something difficult. So فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةَ means and Aqaba means short, for example, difficult off-road, difficult off-road between mountains. We say in Farsi, we say gardane, or the Sa'bul Ubur road. It means that those roads, those off-roads, which is very difficult to pass, to go through. Or for example, sharp turns on a mountain road, on an off-road. On a mountain off-road, sharp turns is called Aqaba. And in English translation, I saw that steep, but he has made no effort to pass on the path that is steep. But it means that Aqaba means that those difficult and difficult off-road or sharp turns between the mountains, which is very difficult to pass away, to go through. So it means that فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةَ, and we said that لَقْتَحَمَ means he didn't even try to get into something difficult. It means that he never tried, he hasn't tried to enter into Aqaba. And then Allah is saying, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةُ, and what will make you comprehend what Aqaba is? What is this difficult off-road and sharp turns in between mountains? What is this difficult road which he didn't? He's that kind of person who said, ما أهلكت لبدا, who said أهلكت مالا لبدا. What is this Aqaba? What is this difficult off-road between mountains that he did not enter it? Then Allah explains about it in ayat 13 to ayat 16. What is this Aqaba? It is فك الرقبة أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة أو مسكينا ذا متربة. It means that this aqaba, which we talk about, which we mentioned, it is fakun raqaba. It is to free a slave. Raqaba is neck, as part of the body means neck. But when did you free? And fak means releasing or freeing, freeing something of something. For example, when you're freeing a neck of something, it means that somebody is under hardships, for example, money wise or anyhow, you help him. It is called fakun raqaba, or freeing, for example, a slave, because it was common that even was common that for slaves who they would arrest, they would put chains around their neck. When you free them, it means that you have freed their neck. So that's the reason it's fakun raqaba. It is a phrase that means that. So what are these aqaba? What are these difficult off-roads that he never entered it? It is one of them is, for example, fakkan raqaba, freeing a slave or helping somebody to get to come out of of the problem, money-wise or anyhow. And then أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسقبة, or feeding food في يوم, in a day of ذي مسقبة, of severe hunger, famine, hunger. When مسقبة means when there is no food, to say قحطي in Farsi, famine. That the day of famine, the day of severe hunger, he did not feed anybody. So this is another meaning of Aqaba, another those hard and difficult off-road which he had to go through. She had to go through. Mankind had to go through. It means which mankind who is capable of helping, and he should have helped. Or yatiman za maqraba, orphan of near relationship. Za yatim means orphan. And then za maqraba means those who are maqraba means comes from qurb, who is close, near relatives. أو مسكينا ذا متربة, or a needy person in misery. Matraba comes from turab. Turab means earth, means dust, for example. And the orphan and the poor man lying in the dust means that the poor people, the poor person who is so weak, who is because of, for example, illness or lack of facilities or food or lack of money and body wise, anyhow, he's so weak that he can't get on his feet. So he is lying in the dust. That's what it wants to explain, that miskin. And miskin is, we know all what miskin means. Just I explain what it comes from. In Arabic, sakin means which is not moving, which is totally constant in its place, not moving at all. And miskin is that person who, due to lack of energy, due to lack of facility, lack of money, or he can't move to to try to earn for himself, to them to improve her life, to, for example, to earn money or to provide food for family. That kind of person we call meskin, and it comes from that's root sakin. And it's again, when it becomes in the shape of meskin, it's exaggerating in grammar point of view of Arabic. So it means that Allah wants to say that, do you remember in the stage you were infants, how I helped you, how I guided you towards with 2 eyes, tongue, and 2 lips, how I guided you towards your mother's breast, and how I fed you, how I helped you when you were so weak, and now you don't care of people, you don't care of poor people at all, and it means it's a Allah is telling them off, is a repent, is rebuke, is blaming. And why? Because they did not enter Aqabah. What was Aqabah? عقبه was فك رقبة إطعام في يوم ذي مسقبة يتيما ذا مقربة أو مسكينا ذا متربة. In fact, the person should enter Aqaba, should enter this path, this off-road, this difficult road, to help other people to arrive to his destination. Because what's the point of Aqaba? Why Allah has used Aqaba? Aqaba is, for example, when we want to go from somewhere to another place, and the road is between mountains, is off-road, is sharp turns, is so hard to pass through. But to get to our destination, we have to go through it. We can't stop. If we stop and look, we don't get anywhere. So it means that oh person, if you want to get to your destination, which is Iman, which becomes a believer, how can we say that? From ayat 17. How you will, if you want to become part of believers, من الذين آمنوا, if you want to become become part of mu'minin, you have to go through this path, and it's nothing except infaq. That's why I'm saying when we study Quran, it looks like other than legislative guidance like Sharia, like namaz, praying, fasting, Hajj, and it looks like there's nothing more important than infaq, which is giving away property, money, or life in the way of Allah. It's really strange that it's really scary that do we really fulfill our duty? Because, for example, when it comes to this point, we think that, oh, this surah is, for example, related to rich people. But no, the Quran, it is not just for rich people. Yes, it's for different, maybe for the richer people is, the richer person is, the more responsibility he has. But every one of us in our current situation and our current uh, situation, money-wise or power, position, whatever, we have got that duty to help others, especially poor people, needy people. And how much do we spend? For example, maybe one person has earned, I don't know, for example, £500 per month. He helps, for example, £50, and one person earns, for example, £10,000 per month. He helps £500 as well. He does not compare £50 as well. I want to say that the more we have money, we have power, we have property, and we are capable of, the more responsibility we have in every way, in anyhow. So, in fact, as we have noticed that it's very, very important. It's not, we can't say it's very important. It is a tool to prove our iman, our real belief. That it is a tool to prove that we are real believers. And in ayat 17, ثم كان من الذين آمنوا وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالمرحمة. ثم, again, it's we say in Arabic grammar is at. At means connecting, connect this ayat to one of the sentences before. And in fact, it's ayat verse 17. ثم connects kana to ayat 11. اقتحم. لا اقتحم. So it means that when we say ثم كان من الذين, it look like we say لا كان من الذين. It means that because he did not enter Aqaba, so he is not part of those people who they are believers. So they were then ثم means then, and it connects it to they were not those being among who believed. من الذين آمنوا. They were not those being among who believed, and وتواصوا بالصبر, and they were not those being among those people who continuously advised each other. to patients. تواصوا بالصبر. Again, here in Arabic grammar, when we say تواصوا, it means that advising each other to patients. It is different by being patient. Continuously advise each other to be patient and accept this advice from each other to be patient. وتواصوا بالمرحمة, and continuously advise each other to compassion and kindness. مرحمة. Again, this is different from being kind. So it is very important, and it is another point of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al-Munkar as well. It's very important. That is why Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al-Munkar is very important in our religion. Because in Quran we have in different verses. So tawasaw bil-sabr means they do not hesitate to accept advice from each other, or they do not hesitate to advise each other to be patient or to accept advice of being patient. And tawasaw bil-marhama is the same. They do not hesitate to accept advice from each other to be kind, to compassion and kindness. And these are the results. In fact, ayat 17 is the result of entering Aqaba. It means that if the person made an effort to enter Aqaba, how? What is Aqaba? Second Aqaba, by freeing a person, solving their problems. إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة, feeding for people, يتيما ذا مقربة, orphans from, for example, relative, مسكينا ذا مسغبة, and helping miskin. By this, if the person entered this, then it becomes part of those who prove their belief, their iman. من الذين آمنوا. He becomes part of من الذين آمنوا. Otherwise, no. It becomes part of tawasaw bil-sabr wa tawasaw bil-marhama. In fact, he reaches the destination of iman, belief. And it's not just blaming Allah, blame up to here. It's in ayat 18 to 20. Allah explains about their final as well, what happens to them. أولئك أصحاب الميمنة. Okay, there are two groups who enters Aqaba, who helps poor people, who does infaq, and another group who does not enter, who do not enter Aqaba, who they just spend themselves and they don't care of poor people, and they are not part of فَكٌ رَقَبَةٍ إِطْعَامٌ فِي يَوْمٍ ذِي مَسْغَبَةٍ يَتِيمًا ذَا مَقْرَبَةٍ مِسْكِينًا ذَا مَتْرَبَةٍ. Those people are والذين they become part of والذين كفروا بآياتنا هم أصحاب المشأمة عليهم نار مؤصدة. When I quickly go through the rest of it, we finish it, and inshallah next week again, we think it is not clear, we will go through this surah. والذين كفروا, but those who disbelieve in our revelation, in our message in the message of Allah, they are the people of dark fortune. أولئك أصحاب الميمنة. Another point is that when أولئك comes at the start, again, it is a grammatical point in Arabic language that it makes it, do you remember إنما, that it would limit the last part of sentence? It's again another tool to limit the sentence. For example, when it says أولئك أصحاب الميمنة, it doesn't mean that these are, أولئك means those people. It doesn't mean that those are who become among who believed and who become among the Ashabul Maymana, or those who they get their results from their right side, or the people of permanent blessing. But here it means that just those who tried to get into Aqaba, just them, only them, they are people of permanent blessing. Just they are Ashabul Mayman. So when Ulaika comes at the start, it means we say hasr. Hasr in Arabic means limitation, limiting it. It makes it unique. That just those who passed it, who
sister. We can't
We couldn't
hear.
hear you.
But those who disbelieve in our revelation, they are the people of dark fortune. Ashabul Mash'ama. Mash'ama means dark fortune. And alayhim naru mu'sada means the fire, the closed fire which takes over them. So it means that there is no way to rescue for them. There is no way to get out of it. Mu'sada, it comes from wasat. Wasat, it means that when two things are connected to each other in a way that they are one thing. For example, if you put two hands together, you open your hand, and like when you want to clap it, you clap hands. How our hands join together and becomes one. It looks like, it means that fire becomes like that with them. In fact, they are connected to fire in a way that it has closed, the closed fire which has taken over them. There is no way to rescue from that situation. So Allah, by reminding the stage of breastfeeding, and another point, I say it like this, that another point which I forgot to mention, that for why Allah used breastfeeding stage as an example, is that because it indicates the peak need of people, the peak point of people where the person is in need, and all the people they experience it in the same way. It's not different for different people. So mankind should know that he was nobody. He was so weak. Allah helped him, and Allah helped him and to grow up and become, for example, if he has got any money, power, and any position, strength, whatever we have, is because of Allah. And to become part of believed people, to prove our belief, we need to enter Aqaba and help poor people. And again, it's not that blame. Allah doesn't blame people because of they spend money. It's that they spend without limitation, with wasting their money in a way that when they know that there are people who they don't have even bread to eat, to feed their children, then how can they waste? And they, with no care, they spend with no care and with no limitation, and they don't think of poor people. Okay, so time is finished now. I wanted to recite part of one of du'as of Saifeh Sajjadiyat, number 30, which is related to it, but we don't have time. And we just pray to Allah, that, oh Allah, grant us success in the proper use of worldly possession, that we can use our worldly possessions properly, and avoiding profusion, israf, avoiding spending with no care of needy people, money, life, whatever we have. And please make us among those who do not neglect the needy people. Make us
إلهي
one of
آمين.
those who enter Aqaba, who enter this off-road which we need to pass to get to our destination, and to be among the blessed and happy people in the hereafter life, and in fact in our real life.
إلهي آمين.
Allahumma salli ala
إلهي آمين.
Muhammad wa ala
اللهم
Muhammad
صل على
وعجل
محمد وعلى